It's a difficult balancing act, keeping guns out of the hands of dangerous criminals while protecting the rights of legal gun owners. And even though it's already difficult to lawfully own a gun in Massachusetts, legislation making its way through Beacon Hill could make it even tougher. That's good news to gun control advocates, but gun owners say the bill goes too far. A packed crowd of those on both sides of the gun debate was on hand at the State House today. The first hearing on Speaker Bob DeLeo's new gun control bill.
I believe the bill recognizes the critical intersection between gun violence, suicide prevention, mental health care, domestic violence, and school safety.
DeLeo's bill would create statewide licensing guidelines for local police chiefs, require background checks for private sales, and forward mental health records for use in federal background checks. Some supporters, like Public Safety Secretary Andrea Cabral, says it should go further to limit the number of gun purchases.
We must act to prevent someone from stockpiling weapons for trafficking. The governor has proposed a one-gun-a-month limitation on purchases, and it is worthy of your consideration.
But State Representative George Peterson says that while the bill includes some good proposals, it is too flawed for him to support.
For me to start to go after the law-abiding citizen who wants to own firearms in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, to further restrict their ability, says that they are the problem.
DeLeo admits his bill has detractors on both sides of the gun control debate, but there's only so much he can do at the state level.
The only way we're going to be truly able to address some of those issues is with federal legislation.
And that's not happening anytime soon. Well, my next guest says the proposed gun bill unfairly punishes lawful gun owners. Jim Wallace is the executive director of the Gun Owners Action League, also known as GOAL. Welcome back to Greater Boston, Jim.
Thanks for having me. Been a little while, but it's great to be back.
Well, you know, we like to refresh these debates every now and then. So the proposals by Bob DeLeo really add on to existing gun bills already in Massachusetts. They're not that draconian. The changes aren't that dramatic. What are you opposed to?
No, actually, they're pretty dramatic. You know, sadly, we actually were very disappointed because we thought there would bill come out that we could support from the get-go. We really wanted to get behind something. And then we saw it when it was released last week, and we're just so greatly disappointed. The biggest opposition we have is that it would expand the so-called suitability clause, which we currently have for licenses to carry. It would expand that to FID cards, which is your basic license for hunters that own long guns, rifles, shotguns. And the problem is that suitability clause has been widely abused by licensing officers across the state, has resulted in countless court cases and thousands of dollars spent in those court cases.
Just to explain it, this is where the local police chief essentially gets to decide whether you have a license to carry, and if the police chief has an opposition to guns or thinks he can make that discretion.
Correct.
So that's what, and the DeLeo bill wants to expand that.
Right, expand it to FID cards.
Yeah.
And of course, what we look at it is, listen, you have a system that's already been abused. And you're not fixing the system, you're actually expanding the system. Now, they do say that in the bill they want EOPs together with the Mass Chiefs to look at a suitability classification.
What's an EOP again?
Executive Office of Public Safety, to look at a standardization of suitability. But, you know, not to get fresh, but it's, okay, we're not going to find out what it is until after we pass the bill. You know, and that's simply just unconscionable that we would expand on something that's already been so widely abused.
All right, let's bring in State Representative David Linsky to the discussion. He represents parts of Middlesex County. David, I hear this all the time after we have one of these discussions about gun control. Why are we going after law-abiding citizens when the vast majority of people who are doing criminal activities are doing it with guns that they may have been legally acquired, but they've handed them over, they've been stolen or something like that. So it's not going to affect the law-abiding gun owners at this point.
Well, we don't think the bill really does go after law-abiding citizens. We're trying to really make a determination.
No, I'm saying it's not going to affect them. I mean, what good does it do about how does it go after the criminals is what I'm getting at.
All right, well, first there are sections of the bill that actually do increase criminal penalties for people who violate the law. And the bill really goes after the different types of gun violence out there. We've got suicide, we've got accidental shootings, we have domestic violence, and we have other types of murders. And each one of those problems actually requires a different type of solution to cut it down. There are people out there who qualify for an FID card presently. They get you either a rifle or a shotgun after they've been turned down for a permit to get a handgun and a license to carry. We think that's a big mistake. You can do the same type of damage and kill the same people as many times with a rifle or a shotgun as you can with a handgun.
Let's try to find some common ground. What about, Jim, the ability to forward people's mental records to the federal side of this? Do you support that? That's always the big issue that comes up, even with this Elliot Rodger kid in California who had a stash of weapons under his bed. I don't know how he acquired them, but he had them. Should people who, I don't know if he had any of them legally, but if let's say he did, would a mental health check have made a difference in that case?
I don't know in that case, but I certainly know we need to comply in Massachusetts. I think we're one of only 4 states that does not comply with the national mental health checks. Goal has said from the outset, if the legislation is written correctly, and we're going through this with a fine-tooth comb to make sure we comply with what they want the first time so we don't have to redo this, absolutely.
So you're okay with that?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
We agree that the mental health records for the commitments should, in fact, go to the national database. Jim and I in agreement on that. But that Elliot Rodger case is important to know because he passed the same mental health background check out in California that we would have here in Massachusetts. That's why we need that suitability requirement, because any police officer who looked at that, or police chief who looked at him and said, well, you may pass the check technically, but you're not a good candidate to have a gun. That's why this change in the law about suitability is so important.
Why do you oppose a background check on the private sales part of this?
Well, it's really because it's redundant. Anybody who has a license in Massachusetts has already had a background check. Those licenses can be pulled at any minute for any reason, for the most part. One of the other problems we have is that the state dealer licenses, the retailers, have had a consistent problem with renewing their licenses to sell. So we never know on a given time if a licensed retailer is going to be available to do these things. The other thing is, because of some of the handgun laws and regulations, there are very high quality handguns that a retailer cannot lawfully sell, but that we can buy and sell between each other. So to us, it's kind of, it's a duplication of efforts, and it really does not solve a problem. It's kind of an invented problem that's going to be solved, I guess, by this.
Governor Patrick, by the way, wanted to limit this to one, that's not in the bill, but one gun per month. Would you have supported that? Should that have been it?
I would like to see that, but I want to get a bill to the governor's desk. And if the legislature has the votes to be able to put that in the bill, we'll put that in the bill. But we can't let that stop us from doing what we can.
All right. Jim Wallace, it's always good to have you. David
Thanks for
Linsky,
having me on.
Thanks so much.